In this lesson, we're going to go over the process of songwriting and how an idea or an initial composition then becomes a song within Logic and what the different layers are. Because if you're new to songwriting and audio production, you might be wondering how you go from one idea or one melody or chord structure into a finished song on iTunes or Spotify or wherever. So the first step is always a composition. Perhaps you've composed the whole piece before you want to record or produce it in Logic, or perhaps it's just an idea that you've written on a guitar or a vocal melody. Sometimes the composition will start in Logic using a MIDI keyboard or something like that. But if it's not a solo piece, you would then go on to add a combination of different instruments and sounds. So if you started with a melody, you would then add chords underneath it, perhaps, or you could add a bass part, a percussion part like a drum kit. Of course, there's no rules. There's no definition of a song, but a lot of the time it will have melody, chords, a bass part, and a rhythm part. And it's a combination of mono and stereo sources. So mono sources are things like single microphones recordings, like a microphone on vocals, like now this is a mono recording, or direct inputs, just plugging your guitar into your audio interface. Whereas stereo sources and instruments could be dual microphone recordings, like drum overheads, two microphones recording a drum kit in stereo. Or it could be samples that you're taking from elsewhere. It could be keyboards. A lot of keyboards now can output stereo, and the left hand will be on the left side, right hand on the right side. Or they'll have stereo effects on them, like stereo reverb, stereo chorus, that you need to record in stereo. So it will be a combination of all of these mono and stereo sources. We add the instruments and it builds up in layers. Once we've got all those layers, and as we're adding layers of instruments and sounds, we need to balance them with each other. And this is essentially what mixing is. We're going to balance them in terms of volume so that we can always hear the main melody. Something like a bass guitar would be lower in volume and more supportive. But we can also use mixing tools like EQ and compression, which we're going to talk about very soon, to balance all those instruments and sounds together until we've just got one final stereo track. And that's when your song is finished. You bounce or export that stereo track, and you'll have all those instruments balanced together, and then you share that on SoundCloud, YouTube, burn it to CD, etc.